Now, with all of the UFO stuff happening lately, with people testifying before Congress and all the UAP is the latest thing, unidentified aerial phenomenon, of course, and then we have UFOs. This is an older UFO book that I found at Half Price Books. And I think this is actually sold, this was sold under a couple of different titles. And because I think if you go into the reviews on Amazon, you'll probably see that I think there's at least one other title. And it looks like I paid $5 for this. But this is originally from 1984. Overall, pretty basic UFO information. But the thing that jumped out at me, I found this in 2009, and I read this, I'll never forget, I got this over the Christmas holiday in 2009, and my kids had just gone back over to their mother's house, and I was left to my own devices, and I just sat by my little space heater and got this book out and thought, I'll read some good old UFO literature. And this did not disappoint. Like I said, most of the information is like, okay, yeah, I kind of knew about that or whatever. But one of the things that this book focuses on that I thought was especially interesting is talking about UFOs over missile silos in the Midwest, over these missile fields like up in Wyoming and I think like North Dakota. But there's some really interesting accounts there. And I have another book that just focuses on that subject. But this was the first book I had read that really documented that, better than some others, about the, again, security personnel in these Air Force bases seeing these unidentified flying objects flying in and out of very secure areas. And probably one of the most disturbing things was in one case, after this UFO hovered over this missile silo and then took off, the missile had its coordinates changed, had basically been reset and had to be taken offline and whatever magic has to happen to that. So that I found really interesting. And the other thing in this was the Tom Adams, who sadly has passed away. Tom Adams was a UFO researcher from my fine state of Texas, and he was from the town of Paris, Texas. And he did some of the best work on cattle mutilations, hands down. Just he was the dude. All through the late 70s, all the way into the early 90s, he ran his own little publication called Stigmata, that every now and then you can come into copies of that on eBay, and where he was documenting, it was a citizen journalism effort where he was documenting all kinds of accounts of cattle mutilation from just the rank and file general public. So reading his stuff is really good because it's not tarnished by a lot of other theoretical thinking. He obviously he was leaned more towards the UFO hypothesis, but he uncovered a lot of paramilitary activity in these areas around cattle mutilations. So lots of really interesting work by Tom Adams. And this book cites one of his publications that he put out called The Choppers and the Choppers, that is solely a document, just solely a catalog of helicopter sightings at animal mutilation sites. And I think I've done a review for it before. If I have, I'll put it at the end of this. But it's called The Choppers and the Choppers. That one is really hard to find. But the beauty of that is all it is a catalog of all the helicopter sightings in these places where there should not have been. And that, when you put that up against some of the other data, you start to see a lot of evidence of a lot of very strange military activity. So, before I wrap up, so overall, good book. Like I said, a lot of the materials covered in other books as well. But overall, this is pretty good, a good one to have, and it's easy to get as far as I can tell as of this recording. But back to the missile silo part of the equation. That I find really curious, and that's one of the things that a lot of people point to say, see, it's got to be aliens because aliens are coming and jacking with the nuclear missiles because they hate nuclear warfare. And while sure that could very possibly be the case, it could also be a faction, part of the government testing their own technology in a controlled way against guys who are going to try to protect that at all costs. So you don't tell these guys that you're running this test and you fly in and you see if you can jack with the coordinates and you find out. But the guys on the ground do not need to know that. Even the guys pretty far up the chain of command have no need to know, and that's a great way to find out. Do you have the capability to swoop in over someone's missile fields and jack with their ballistic missile capability? So I think that's an important angle to consider in all of that. I take a lot of heat whenever I discuss some of this stuff about, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I am an alien agnostic. I don't believe or disbelieve in aliens or whatever, but I need to see that something of that magnitude, we need really strong proof. And in my 32 years now of researching this topic, I went from a strong believer in aliens to starting to realize there was way more human deception in this than I had originally thought. And that forced me to really reevaluate a lot of the information and go back and weigh out a lot of that. And you start to realize that there's a whole lot of psychological warfare personnel that overlap and military intelligence personnel that overlap with the UFO phenomenon. So anyway, so I say that in advance of the comments. I'm not, again, we're all trying to figure this out. We're all putting this puzzle together. That's my 2 cents on the alien phenomenon. But overall, good book, and again, easy to find. If you want something that's a good kind of cross-section of the UFO phenomenon that I think is pretty intelligently written and pretty well presented, this is a good one. So anyway, again, The UFO Cover-Up by Lawrence Fawcett and Barry J. Greenwood. And again, even though I said it, I think it was from 1984. I just want to confirm, from 1984. So there you go.